the founders of the Religious Action Center dreamed of furthering American ideals and Jewish values by making a difference. The dream was affirmed by President John F. Kennedy upon receiving from the Union a historic Torah in ceremonies associated with the RAC's launch.
In the inaugural address, to which the rabbi mentioned, I said that the basic issue was that the rights the citizen enjoyed did not come from the state, but rather came from the hand of God. And it's written here, and it's written in the Old and the New Testament. So I'm grateful to you, and I want you to know that in coming here today, I think it symbolizes the happy relations which exist between all religious groups and must continue to exist in this country if we are to be worthy of our heritage.
Over its first 25 years, under the aegis of Dick Hirsch, Al Vorspan, and then David Saperstein, the RAC's advocacy, educational, and programmatic work grew dramatically. And, as the video you will see reflects, by its 25th anniversary, the RAC's impact on Capitol Hill was widely acknowledged and respected.
No organization anywhere works more competently, more compassionately, and more effectively for social justice for all Americans than the Religious Action Center.
The Religious Action Center is important because it activates the rest of the American Jewish community on issues that are broad-based. It's that one organization that doesn't hesitate to speak out.
I can tell you that every black member of Congress knows of the Center's work for civil rights for all Americans.
I had an extraordinary ally. It was the Religious Action Center. They energized the entire religious community. Does the center make a difference? You bet.
No issue affecting the basic rights of all Americans is more important than the attack by the far right on our Constitution. Our best defense against those who seek to dismantle the Bill of Rights and break down the wall of separation between church and state is the broad-based coalition of groups the Religious Action Center helps coordinate. I can tell you that the Religious Action Center makes a difference.
And now the RAC exerts an expanded impact on Capitol Hill with a larger program that reaches thousands of social action leaders throughout the reform movement each year.
The RAC has been a powerful champion of economic justice, social justice, civil rights, religious tolerance all over the world.
When we had the major battle over the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Helped us make the case that global warming is a moral issue.
The RAC makes a difference on religious liberty. For domestic partnerships now, for marriage equality.
For women's rights.
In our efforts to support Israel.
And advocating for economic justice in our nation and around the world.
On the issue of international religious freedom, on the issue of prison rape.
In the environmental area, the Religious Action Center has been a wonderful and important ally.
When it comes to standing up and fighting for social justice, fighting for the poor, fighting for those who have been left out and left behind. That the Religious Action Center has been there every step of the way.
Yes, over the years, the RAC's presence as the social justice voice of our reform movement to the nation's capital has been manifested in hundreds of legislative battles, in the social justice training programs, in which nearly 60,000 reform lay leaders, high school students, college students, community members, as well as over 1,000 Reform, conservative, and Reconstructionist rabbis have participated in the wide array of social justice programs for synagogues, social action committees that have become mainstays across North America.
As a longtime member of the Commission on Social Action, one emblematic and memorable way the RAC has made a difference over its 50 years has been its role in organizing some of the landmark marches and rallies for social justice held on the Mall of the nation's capital. Time and time again, the RAC has mobilized robust Reform Jewish delegations from across North America to demonstrate an impassioned Jewish presence in our seat of government.
So this afternoon, we reflect on 4 such great gatherings, what they said about us then, what they say about us now, and what they mean for the great moral challenges that we all face tomorrow. So first, let us go back to the beginning, to the RAC's founding in the heart of the civil rights struggle.
I used to be Al Vorspan, and I was present at Genesis, the creation of this Commission on Social Action and the Religious Action Center, under the courageous, prophetic leadership of Rabbi Maurice Eisendrath, then President of the Union. And only after a fierce controversy, inflamed by the passions over the Civil Rights Movement, and an electrifying debate in this very city 50 years ago, last month, did this movement endorse and launch the Religious Action Center. For all of us who founded the RAC, in the midst of this movement, we believed that the then nearly 1 million Reform Jews of 600 Reform congregations could be a force to transform history. I remember when the idea of a Commission on Social Action and a Religious Action Center were first proposed. One member of the board of the union said, "This is not a time for this kind of controversial project. We're in the midst of McCarthyism. It's dangerous to speak up." And I remember my boss, Rabbi Eisendrath, saying, "The prophets didn't speak in soft and easy times. They spoke for tough times and tough challenges, and that's what this movement is going to do now." The Religious Action Center building was given to us by the remarkable Kivi Kaplan, URJ board member, who would rise to become president of the NAACP while he was a great leader of this Reform Jewish movement. And he forged a close link between the NAACP and the URJ that lasts until today. As you saw, the launching of the RAC was saluted by President Kennedy in a Rose Garden celebration. Even watching it now, decades later, it almost brings tears to my eyes. I was there, a few feet away from the president, and I remember that picture of a radiant young president receiving the Torah from Rabbi Eisendrath. But I also remember Arthur Goldberg, a member of our commission, and the President's Secretary of Labor at that time, saying, "Mr. President, we should really have given you a yarmulke." And the President, smiling mischievously and without missing a beat, replied, "Arthur, don't you know I'm a Reform Jew?"
By the early 1960s, the civil rights movement was in full swing. As the demonstrations, sit-ins, and marches against Jim Crow laws expanded through the South, Jews participated in great numbers. As many as 40% of the young idealistic freedom riders were Jewish. Famously, after responding to Dr. King's call for support from the Reform Jewish community, Al Vorspan and 16 Reform rabbis were arrested in St. Augustine, Florida, for demonstrating against segregation. As part of a coalition of civil rights, labor, and religious groups, the Religious Action Center helped plan the August 1963 March on Washington, sometimes meeting at the RAC building.
For me, for Rabbi Eugene Lippman, who was my co-director of the Commission on Social Action, for Dick Hirsch, who was our comrade in arms in Washington, that March on Washington was a national Yom Kippur, a day of repentance and renewal for America. Our congregations and rabbis poured into Washington to be part of the coalition of decency that transformed America. Blacks and Jews were crucial partners in civil rights legislative efforts, working together in our headquarters, in our conference room, and ultimately drafting in our conference room parts of the momentous Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of '65, and other key civil rights laws of which Martin Luther King dreamed out loud, but which we and many others in the Coalition of Decency made a part of American history. This movement was not silent then or now in the face of moral challenge. I will cherish these memories with great pride, that we as a prophetic movement of Jews had the guts to say Hineni when our nation and our conscience needed us.
Our steadfast pursuit of civil rights has not been limited to a single decade or struggle. The RAC has been engaged in countless battles for equal rights, and in recent decades, particularly effective in the fight for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender equality. Up until recently, the LGBT community was marginalized. We were the stones that the builders rejected. But now we are the chief cornerstones. I am a lesbian, I am a Jew, I am an imam, and I am a partner. Every piece of me is deeply affirmed by the Reform movement. I not only feel protected by the Religious Action Center, I feel embraced by our community because it has made LGBT equality a priority. I also stand upon the shoulders of the rabbis and cantors and educators who encouraged me to come out so many years ago. If it weren't for these pioneers, I wouldn't be standing here today. And so, because the RAC raises its voice, I can raise my family, and we can raise our voice in song, in celebration, in protest. I am so proud of the leadership role that the RAC has played in the struggle for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In fighting employment discrimination, in pushing for hate crimes legislation, and for marriage equality. Indeed, the Reform movement was one of the first faith groups in North America to embrace civil and religious marriages for gays, bisexuals, and lesbians.
RAC has not just been our strong and courageous ally in this, they have been with us since the beginning. Whether it is Rabbi Saperstein's expert and inspired testimony on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, when we began the fight against the Defense of Marriage Act, when it was much less popular to stand with us in that fight, and all the way up until recently fighting the Federal Marriage Amendment courageously by our side, and has truly been the leader in the religious community advocating for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender equality.
Through its leadership on behalf of black civil rights, for immigrant and Latino rights, for religious minorities, and for separation of church and state.
Through dedication to equality for all North Americans, the RAC makes a difference.
During the 1963 March on Washington, my mother watched on TV as the world changed before her eyes. In April of 2004, then 73 years old, my mother was thrilled to physically show her support for the reproductive choices that were not available for her generation. I traveled with my mother and daughter from our home in Connecticut to Washington, D.C. 3 generations strong, we joined over 5,000 Reformed Jews, hundreds wearing gold RAC t-shirts, and nearly 1 million other activists at the March for Women's Lives. I know that reproductive choice is not only a women's issue, and this was not only a women's march. So at a time that reproductive rights were once again increasingly threatened, we stood together as a family, mother, daughter, granddaughter, along with my husband and young son.
As the current nifty social action vice president, I am proud to be a part of the legacy of social justice being passed down l'ador vador from generation to generation. My own journey with the RAC began in the summer of 2009 when I came to Washington, D.C. with the nifty social action leadership. We spent several days at the RAC learning from the legislative assistants, Washington policy experts, and members of Congress. This experience proved vital in preparing me for my current NIFTY role, guiding the social action programming for NIFTY's entire membership in the US and Canada. Each day, I am inspired by the work of the RAC in shaping the movement's social justice values and commitments. Just 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to staff a Litakane seminar, the RAC's flagship youth advocacy training that brings nearly 2,000 Reform high school students to DC each year. I was able to share with the participants some of what the RAC has taught me, talking about today's most urgent issues and giving them the tools to advocate for change. On the Monday of each seminar, the students take to the halls of Congress to advocate on issues of their choosing, with many opting to focus on women's rights.
The Reform movement's dedication to women's rights goes back nearly a century. The RAC's advocacy for women's rights and reproductive rights goes back to its inception. The campaigns and marches in support of the Equal Rights Amendments in the 1970s, its key role in the March for Women's Lives, its leadership in organizing the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and its continued legislative work to protect and expand reproductive rights. It's a commitment shared by 3 generations of my family, and it's a source of pride for us as Reformed Jews.
Reformed Jews have long been at the forefront of efforts for equal rights, and that's in so many different venues. And your powerful commitment to the American value of equality under the law, combined with the Jewish commitment to Tikkun Olam, makes you an important ally and a force for change. At Planned Parenthood, we are very grateful for the efforts that you've made to ensure that women have access to health care, including the full range of reproductive health care. And that means everything from helping young people get responsible and medically accurate sex education, to family planning for the millions of women in this country who need it and need affordable and quality care, to the right to make the most personal and private decisions that women will ever make about having children and when to have them.
Through support of reproductive choice and women's rights.
Through work fostering the next generation of North American Jewish social justice activists, the RAC makes a difference.
I stand as another example of the RAC's impact from one generation to the next. My father, Rabbi Jack Stern, participated in the civil rights struggles of the 1960s. And later, his congregation, Westchester Reformed Temple of Scarsdale, New York, became a leader in the Reform movement's support of Soviet Jewry. In 1987, the RAC, which then housed the National Conference on Soviet Jewry, became the organizing hub of the mass demonstration of solidarity with Soviet Jews. Both the synagogue of my youth and my current congregation, Temple Emmanuel of Dallas, responded vigorously. Reform Jews from Scarsdale, from Dallas, and across the country traveled to D.C. for the rally. Rabbis and congregants, rabbinic students and college students and nifty kids, joining 250,000 others on the National Mall. So many of us were there. Generations of commitment and strength gathered on a cold day in a historic call for freedom.
The summer after my freshman year of college, I came to Washington as a participant in the RAC's Mahone Kaplan internship program. That summer, spent interning in D.C. and attending classes at the RAC, not only cemented my love for politics, but also taught me that one could, in fact, survive and thrive in this city doing social justice work in a Jewish way. In short, I was hooked on the RAC. 3 years later, I was hired as an Isodrath legislative assistant and took on the foreign affairs portfolio, which included global HIV/AIDS and poverty, as well as the genocide in Darfur. I learned about international human rights, Jewish theories of just war, and about the poverty and diseases that strike the most vulnerable members of our global community. Although each issue resonated with me, it was the work on global poverty and health that became my passion and now my career. Today, as a member of the public policy and advocacy team at the nonprofit Save the Children here in Washington, I advocate for effective U.S. foreign assistance programs and policies that achieve real and lasting change for children and their families around the world. Despite working for a secular organization now, I still think every day about the RAC and the Jewish values that convince me of the importance of not standing idly by the blood of your neighbor, even if your neighbor is across the ocean.
The Reform movement's dedication to international human rights and religious freedom continues today, most particularly through the campaign to stop genocidal activity in Darfur. In my congregation and in so many more across the movement, powerful lay initiatives became national in scope and influence, thanks to the help and support of the RAC. In October of 2005, when I was privileged to travel with David Saperstein, Rick Jacobs, and Ruth Messenger to visit Darfuri refugee camps in Chad, we learned that if the circumference of our moral concern is too narrow, if we say the suffering is too great or too far away, we choke off sacred possibility for the people who need us and for ourselves. In April of 2006, Temple Emmanuel of Dallas sent a delegation to Washington, D.C. to join the Save Darfur rally to stop genocide. Groups from countless Reform congregations made up over a quarter of the nearly 100,000 participants. Packed into a crowd of Jewish activists, listening to speakers like Elie Wiesel, George Clooney, then Senator Barack Obama, and our own rabbis Jacobs and Saperstein, we rejected resignation in the face of slaughter. We stood and stand as a reform movement of urgency and hope.
A few months ago, as I stood in the Kunanga refugee camp in eastern Chad, teeming with refugees from Darfur, a 3-year-old Darfur boy took my hand and would not let go. He is an African Muslim and I'm a rabbi from New York. But then and now we are joined in faith and fate. As I left, his eyes cried out, "Do not forget me." I can still feel his little hand in mine. His life and millions of others are in our hands. God, we will not let you down again. We are people of conscience and action, and we can stop genocide.
In supporting Jewish communities and advocating for genocide prevention around the world.
In fighting for international human rights and cultivating generations of global citizens inspired by Jewish values, the RAC makes a difference.
So if you think that politics is broken, if you think this country doesn't work anymore, if you think that the Jewish community isn't stepping up to its prophetic obligations at such a critical moment of its history, then these leaders, the young ones who are here, the experienced ones who are here, and the eternal Al Vorspan, they are the cure, and the extraordinary work of our synagogues is the antidote.
We don't have to wait to see the kind of change we've been working for. We can see it in Al, Wendy and David, in Julie, Avra, and Allison, in all the alumni of the RAC's legislative assistant, Lita Kane, Machon Kaplan, England Rabbinic Student Seminar, and Brickner Rabbinic Training Programs. We can see it in the extraordinary social justice programs our congregations are doing across North America. We can see it in our legislative victories, which we are still achieving against all odds and to which we will continue to dedicate ourselves.
And this year, as part of the RAC's 50th anniversary celebration, we've doubled our advocacy networks to over 54,000 people. If you're not a part of them yet, take a second right now to text your name and your email address, the number on the screen, and to join the legislative networks that make the RAC as effective as it is.
I look at the thousands of young people coming through our RAC programs each and every year, and I see future rabbis and nonprofit leaders and synagogue lay leaders and future members of Congress and perhaps a future president of the United States, or even a future Prime Minister of Canada. And I know with confidence that the change they will make in the world will be informed by their commitment to Reform Judaism and their dedication to Tikkun Olam.
We do it for our future.
We do it for all those that are left out and locked out.
We do it to protect the environment, God's creation entrusted to our care.
We do it to curtail religious extremism in Israel and in the United States.
We do it for the differently abled.
We do it so Israel, the United States, and Canada will be the beacons of freedom and hope the world so desperately needs.
We do it for the cause of justice, peace, and human rights. We do it for the future of the Jewish people and the leading role that a vibrant, powerful reform movement is destined to play.
For the cause of justice.
For the dream of equality.
For generations yet to come.
The RAC makes a difference.
So, as we end this year-long celebration of the RAC's 50th anniversary, and as that anniversary celebration culminates in just a few minutes in welcoming the President of the United States, we honor those at this biennial who have made a difference with the RAC throughout its history. So I would like to invite all the current and former RAC staff members and Eisendrath legislative assistants to stand and remain standing. Would you please stand up? What? Okay, I thought you said the opposite. And for those who have participated in our marches, stand up also. And for those who have participated in our synagogue programs of mitzvah days and our holiday hunger programs, stand up now. And if you've ever been involved in any of the RAC's efforts, stand up. And together, you are the blessing that makes a difference.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty, among the fruits in plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriots' dream that sees beyond the year. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. us, sing with us. Raise your voices right now. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty.